Hey, Jack. Welcome to the program. I am
Glenn,
shocked.
Always a pleasure, man.
Thank you. Shocked at this this story about Andy Ngo and what happened in this courtroom in Portland. It is, I mean, it's absolutely a movie that you wouldn't believe.
Well, Glenn, it's even beyond that, because one of the only journalists that's actually been covering this every day was Katie Daviscourt of the Post Millennial. And
yes,
she's in there not only accosted by Antifa throughout the proceedings, following the proceedings, Glenn, when she walked back to her car, which was not parked near the courtroom, by the way, she found that all of her car windows had been smashed. Items had been stolen. She's still going through to figure out what was stolen. She's got threats all across her Twitter just for the very act of reporting on journalism, in which you have a journalist, Andy Ngo, attempting to find some way to receive justice for the fact that his own First Amendment rights, freedom of the press, but we all used to agree on things like this, little basic stuff there. It's called the First Amendment. Yeah. And he's trying to find some way to get justice for what was done to him, because, Glenn, keep in mind, this is not the first time Andy has attempted to use the legal system, or at least go to the legal system for some kind of recompense. He first filed charges for the assault that was later found not. He was found. The judge found him guilty, or found Andy to be a victim, but then also found that the Antifa attacker was not liable, because he said Andy had provoked it. He said that Andy had provoked it by tweeting about the man earlier than the actual event, even though the man tracked Andy Ngo to a gym.
Okay, so if you say something about you say something about somebody, and they have a right to track you down and beat you within an inch of your life,
Of course,
it's a new concept.
That's justice in Portland. It's a different kind of justice, Glenn. It's a little different than what the founders outlined in the Federalist Papers. Slightly different. Maybe the Sons of Liberty know a little bit about it.
Yeah, it's called social justice. Now, listen, the attorney. Tell me about the attorney for the Antifa people, because I take this as an absolute threat, and I'd love your thought on this.
Well, so you're right. So this attorney who's representing. And you actually had two attorneys, one representing Hacker, one representing Richter, who are the two members of what I would say in the military was essentially a targeting cell of Antifa. Now, because Antifa operates in black bloc, we can't know. We essentially don't know exactly who the members of the black bloc were. That's when they dress in black, they run up in masks and beat you within an inch of your life. Has been done to Andy Ngo multiple times, and yet he keeps going back because he wants to get the story. He is that dogged about this, even knowing that, as happened in this situation, if found out, they will do exactly this to him. He's doing his job for the post-millennial. In this case, these two individuals, we know for a fact, targeted Andy, they doxed him, and they were giving live updates in real time on Twitter as they were chasing Andy Ngo through the streets of Portland one night. He's gone down this street. He's just made a right. It's like you're in Mission Impossible, and the guy's over the ear. We found him. He just went into this hotel. He's holed up inside the hotel. The hotel's trying to get rid of him. These are the people that in the military we would call this essentially a terrorist targeting cell, where they're giving the directions to the terrorists that are on the ground, trying to potentially chase an operative, or maybe an infiltrator, an agent, maybe even an interpreter, like something you would see in Afghanistan or Syria. This was happening on the streets of an American city, which, by the way, was around the same time that another member of Antifa, Michael Forrest Reinhold, decided to summarily execute a Trump supporter on the streets of Portland. So this is all going around the same time frame. And so Andy knows that potentially he could be killed because of the actions by these Antifa members. This is on video. You have them actually showing up to the hotel after the beating. We have them on video there, egging it on. We have their tweets. We have their text messages. They had signal messages, ones that came up in discovery, but the judge later said the jury wasn't allowed to take a look at because they were deemed immaterial. They were then found not liable. And And the attorney for them essentially stated that the whole thing came down to this. The whole argument came down to, well, Andy does it too because he posts people's pictures after they've been arrested.
That's a journalist. I mean, every newspaper has done that forever. So you have this, the attorney, and says, I'm going to remember all of your faces. Is that just because you were such a great jury and I just always want to remember you fondly? Or was that a threat?
Glenn, when you're operating a situation like this, the jury, and in these courtrooms, keep in mind that Justice Center of Portland is right down the street from where the federal courthouse in Portland was ransacked for 57 nights during the George Floyd riots by Antifa members, night after night after night. Federal law enforcement tried in vain in many cases to arrest and protect the courthouse, but they were not allowed out into the rest of the area because the governor didn't allow it. The governor didn't call for the activation of federal assets. And so these jurors that are coming in there understand, right? They implicitly understand that they still have to live in Portland. They still have to go to work in Portland. Their children, their family members, elderly family members, their friends, wherever they're going around, they're all still there. So that lawyer says to them, I will remember your faces. And the judge even said, and Glenn, it was multiple times throughout the trial, that there were threats of doxing, of releasing the identities of the jurors that were going on. This is the same type of stuff that echoes some of the darkest moments of America's history.
It is. I mean, honestly, if you're a reasonable human being, I do not know why after this ruling, after everything else, but this, the way this was done, get the hell out of Portland and Oregon. If this is going to be tolerated, you're living in I don't even know Nazi Germany, or you're living in some drug cartel country. This is not America. And Antifa says that they're anti-fascist, and they were really formed to go against the Nazis. The Nazis had the brown shirts at the time. These were the black shirts. They were both just as bad. The Nazis were perhaps a little worse because they had organizing powers in the government, which I think is happening here. They would get all kinds of breaks, in court and everything else. But they are using exactly this. This is the brown shirt army. It's just a black shirt army on the streets of America, doing exactly what the Nazis did to the population, to get them to obey, turn a blind eye, and shut up. You disagree with that, Jack?
I think that's exactly right. And I would even add that the original iteration of Antifa, as you correctly described, in Weimar Germany, they didn't directly go after the Nazis. They like to say that today, but they actually, in many cases, worked with the brown shirts because their real target was what they called the fascism of their day. What was that? It wasn't Adolf Hitler and the Nazi Party. It was the ruling government. It was the Republic. The Republic was their target for destabilization and the later overthrow. And so everyone must understand that when they say they are talking about fascism, they're describing the current government of the Republic. That's what they define as fascism. They define banks as fascism, churches, any institution in the country, the legal system itself, even though in this case they threatened the legal system to do their bidding. That is what they define as fascism. And at the time, it actually came down directly from Stalin that they were to focus on the Weimar Republic, destabilizing it because they thought that they'd be able to take over the Weimar Republic. That's not exactly how it worked out.
So, Jack, I need to take a break. And then you tweeted something. Results like Andy Ngo ruling today show the nature of the fight for 2024. If you don't have the guts for that fight, get out of the way. This is not time for a policy debate. Marquess of Queensbury Republicans are not built for this. I want to understand exactly what you mean by that, because I think it's really important that we we know what each other are saying and what we are preaching for. And we'll get your answer on that here in just a second. Jack Posobiec is joining us now. Jack, what did you mean by that tweet?
So, Glenn, what I mean by this is that you've got so many Republicans up in Washington, D.C., and really throughout the country, quite frankly, that still think that this is the 1980s, the 1990s, and we can just go along to get along. We can play fair. We can sort of, keep the gloves on and shake hands and, go hang out with Tip O'Neill after, a hard-fought legislative session. Meanwhile, though, you've got one side that's willing to use lawfare, that's willing to abuse the system, that's willing to put political opponents in jail. And regardless of what you think of Trump, that is exactly what they are doing right now. They've arrested him twice now, by my count, at the federal level, once at the state level, and there's probably another one coming up. And so if you've got one side that's willing to use the power of the system against their political opponents, and then another side that says, oh, no, we can't do that because that wouldn't be nice, which side do you think is going to win?
So here's my question, and I think this is a discussion that we have to have openly. When I worked at Fox, Roger Ailes said something to me. He said, Glenn, we all love the Constitution, but at times there are things we just have to do. No, I'm sorry. The Bill of Rights are the Bill of Rights, and it's the only thing that protects all of us. And I'm not looking for an unchecked power on the right, just like I don't want a dictatorship on the left. I don't want one on the right. George Washington said we didn't overthrow one dictator to replace him with another, or tyrant was his word. So what are you suggesting? You're not suggesting that we use extra constitutional powers, are you?
Well, no, Glenn, I mean, keep in mind, if I was going to be announcing that, I wouldn't be posting it on Twitter. But no, in all seriousness, what we need to be doing is looking at the powers of government as they are currently constituted. For example, did Hunter Biden commit any of these crimes within a jurisdiction that has a Republican attorney general or a Republican
Amen.
Attorney in one of these cities? Why not file charges against
100%
the bank accounts?
Yes.
You've got Tommy Tuberville right now. Tommy Tuberville is holding up every single higher level flag officer appointment promotion within the Department of Defense, because the Department of Defense is currently allowing, illegally, by the way, allowing for the federal travel, funding for the federal travel for abortions. These are the types of system shocks that Republicans need to start looking at. Is that the normal course of things? Is that the way the system is supposed to work? Yeah, probably not. But is it within the bounds of the Constitution? Of course it is. That's what we need to start thinking of. That's number one. System shock. I want system shock Republicans. And if people like Tuberville are looking at that, that's great. Jack Smith, how is he getting funded? Why aren't we bringing why isn't the House, Matt Gaetz had a thing yesterday, why don't we bring Jack Smith up before the House and make him testify? And if he refuses to testify, hold him in contempt and see how that works.
So, Jack, is this a problem that is really revolving around old school Republicans like Mitch McConnell that I think are either part of it, so old they don't know what's going on, they still think it's 1985? Because I think Chip Roy is a patriot, is a constitutionalist, and he's a shock to the system. And every constitutional tool we have, we should use.
Well, I think that this is something that Strauss and Howe lay out in their book Generations, where they describe the fourth turning. And Glenn, we are in a fourth turning now. We are currently in it. The crisis has not ended yet, by the way. And so they talk about how in most people within a generation, their worldview is concrete. It is formed based on the world as it was constituted during their childhood. And then they carry that worldview all the way with them forward. Now, that's not to say that corruption doesn't exist. That's not to say that people are not bought off, that people have been in Washington for far too long. don't understand what's happening out in the rest of the world, because it's like Hunger Games right now. We've got the districts versus the capital, and the people within the capital are using and exploiting the districts for whatever they want, except, our war isn't, our children aren't going to war on TV. They're just going over to Ukraine and Afghanistan and all these other places. And and we watch that on TV. We support it through Twitter. And so the problem is you've got essentially two types, right? But the effect is still the same. Whether or not it's they don't get it or whether it's corrupt, the consequences are still the same. Because whether or not you are willing to face the fourth turning, we are in it.
I agree. And if anybody's not reading, what is it? The Fourth Turning is Now, or something like that. The latest on the Fourth Turning, you're missing out. That is a really, really good read. Jack, I appreciate it. I'd love to sit down and talk to you some more about these things, because I think we are hitting a moment that the Weimar Republic hit. And we have to be extraordinarily careful on how we play this, but we have to play it with the brass knuckles of the Constitution. Sorry, violation of the Bill of Rights and the Constitution, we're going after you. And I completely agree. Where are the local district attorneys that are willing to take on Hunter Biden and all of those crimes that happen all across America?